In this video, I will provide you with a conversation structure to improve your spin sales and give you a better understanding of what questions to ask the client and how many in order to close the deal. There is another video on the channel about the types of questions in the spin method, and now I will reveal the sequence of questions and the conversation frame. So, put aside the popcorn and grab your notebooks. Before we start, I want to warn you that this is just one version of the structure. I hope you find some useful points for yourself. The first step is to break the ice, engage in small talk or create positive and light emotions if it suits the situation. The second step is to ask a question that will help the client understand why it is necessary to answer all the questions in this conversation. In this step, you set the conversation frame, that is, tell the client how the conversation will start and how it will end. That is, to set the client up for the entire process, for your conversation frame that you have prepared. In consulting, in psychology, this is called a consultation framework. In sales, it can be called setting the conversation frame. The third step is to identify how you know the need. Of course, add the reason why it is interesting for the client to express this need. For example, in order to formulate an accurate proposal that fits the conditions of the tender, please tell us what urgent problem you are currently solving in the topic. And here, name your topic. Or if you are selling services or training, such as an online course, you can say it like this. In order to determine which format suits you best and to see if it will work for you, please tell us what is important to you when choosing an online course. Here, you can also learn more about the client's situation, such as when the product is needed, the timelines, and the people involved in the process. In other words, look at the situation from the client's perspective. Next is the fourth step. Identify motives and reach an even deeper level of understanding. So, if equipment is needed, then why is the equipment needed? If savings are needed, then why is this criterion the most important? If it is the most important, then how did you come to the conclusion that it is the most important for the client? Why did it turn out this way? Step 5. After identifying the need, the reason, that is, the motives, you can move on to, let's say, measurements or creating emotions that will drive the client towards the purchase. For example, if profit or savings are important to the client, then calculate the profit or savings over a certain period, such as a month, quarter, or year. If it is difficult to measure, it can still be measured by saving time or effort, because every product is created to specifically gain an advantage in something. This is measured in money, time, and effort. For example, a person will not spend 2 hours on operational tasks because there is automation. This will save her 40 hours a month, which are so lacking for development or hobbies. So, if you don't know what the purchase criteria are measured in, that is, the purchase conditions, then if you haven't completed the fifth step, it will be difficult for you to compare value with price, and you know that value must be greater than price, therefore it is logical that value needs to be calculated. That is what will happen if you implement this solution. Next, if the client is interested, you think you need to explain how you work. But don't do this. In almost every video on the channel, I explain why it's not worth doing. Why am I telling you that you might miss the mark in your work? Because the decision-making mechanism at the moment when the client thinks they want to work with you occurs after the value has been compared with the price. Therefore, instead of explaining how you work, it is better to make the client understand how they will reach their point B, their goals. And if he understands this, the decision to purchase your product will happen automatically. If you are selling emotions, the ultimate state where feelings are overwhelming, you need to make sure that the client imagines themselves in this situation and stays there for as long as possible, at least for 2 minutes. In a conversation, of course, I'll explain using my own case as an example. Once, I helped an online school sell a course on creating clothing and personal branding to show managers that closing a deal works in the moment, and to provide a personal example. I called one of the rejectors in the moment, broke the ice, and asked the client the following question. And if you take our online course, to make your own brand's clothing, which you will wear, and then people will ask you where you bought it. What will that mean to you? The client laughed and began to genuinely rejoice. The person had already made an emotional decision to purchase, and we just discussed the formal aspects of participating in the online course. In other words, I tapped into the dominant emotion that was driving the client. Of course, I recommend asking such a question not in all cases. It fits if it aligns with the person's motive. In this case, the motive was to prove to oneself that I am capable, that I can, and that I can grow in my own eyes. This motive is common among many people, but it is important to distinguish the dominant motive, the dominant emotion, from the non-dominant one, because what is not the most important does not sell. This is an example of one of the 30 purchase motives. And which of the 30 purchase motives drives your specific client? I recommend identifying separately at each step and clearly define what this motive is. Here's how to improve spin sales. Know the lists of emotions and motives and be able to identify and distinguish them from one another. It is also important to know how to work with each type of emotion and feeling. Of course, when I conduct an audit in sales departments, I do not see in the regulations how to work with each motive or trigger. Of course, this is taught in institutes of psychotherapy and psychology, but sales need to be learned quickly. There is no time to spend 5 years studying this. Therefore, in the manager's adaptation program or in your sales manual, in addition to scripts and regulations, you need to clearly list the types of customer awareness, purchase motives, types of triggers, and how to work with each. There will be separate videos about this. Techniques for closing deals are also important. People often ask or say, I know how to identify needs, I know how to greet, I know how to build trust, but you tell me how to close the deal. I will tell you, no way. If you have not thoroughly completed these steps and questions, how can you close the deal? This automatically means that trust is not established, and therefore the issue of closing the deal arises. Therefore, it is correct to ask what needs to happen for the deal to close on its own. I do not cover this in the video because it would be very lengthy and resemble a separate online course. Therefore, to close the deal, you can at least go through these steps, record the result, think it over, consult, and get back to the client with a solution if your client has a long decision-making cycle rather than just selling bread or sausage in a store. Because the aforementioned question, steps, and closing the deal are not so easy to accomplish during a single conversation. We all know about trust and the importance of improving it. However, if you were to explain an algorithm that you could pass on to your colleague, manager, or assistant, it becomes unclear how to build trust over the phone with a client who does not yet trust you or who is skeptical due to indecision. Imagine you have the task of teaching someone how to build trust. We will record a separate video about this because trust is the foundation, and it is built both with the aforementioned questions and with additional tools that I discuss in other videos. So, how do you like the ideas for improving your spin sales? Will you implement them? If you need more examples or steps, you can ask your questions in the comments. I will respond personally. And for those who are particularly persistent, you can write to me directly on Telegram or Instagram if you are interested in more modern ways of closing deals and building trust. I will show and prove this in practice, why it works better, and you will notice it right in the moment.